Hey everybody, Josh RV Nerd here with Bish's RV with your monthly-ish industry update here for February now. By the way, fellas, you still got a little bit of time to shop for Valentine's Day. In case you forgot, here's your reminder, you're welcome. This month, I had like 6 pages of notes and I'm like, I already talked too much. Nobody's gonna listen to all that. So I pared it down to the kind of the more critical things here. We're gonna take a kind of consistent look like we have been doing at like motorhome and towable value trends and kind of what we're looking at over the year. At some point there was some kind of crazy thing out there, people saying we might see $7 gas this year, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that and explain what it means and what it doesn't mean. Also, there have been some I think significant developments in the internal combustion engine effectively ban that is rolling out there, specifically from Cummins, and what that might mean to RVers, and that's good news, thankfully. Also, we're going to be taking a look at some interesting developments as the concept of EVs and eRVs continues to develop. There are suddenly a lot of different moving parts in that picture. All that and more today. Once again, if you appreciate the information that we bring you here, even when it isn't necessarily beneficial to us as a dealership, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and if you're in some kind of like Facebook group or something, you could share this, you think somebody might find benefit to it, hit that share button. Let's get rolling. And I'd especially appreciate it, even if you just left me a note and said, hey, thanks, nerd, for coming out here and all that yucky, white, cold stuff and getting us this information. But to the point, Vanleigh RV, the basically luxury towable fifth wheel division of Tiffin RV, is slated to close its doors. Now, I'm not the first one breaking this news. It's actually a couple weeks old, and this is just the first chance that I've had to be able to get out there and talk about it. But a lot of people have asked me, like, what's happening here? What's going on? So a little while back, Tiffin RV was acquired by Thor RV, and whether that has anything to do with it, I don't know. I wasn't really able to discern anything like that. I don't personally have any like major contacts over there, so I was only able to gather a little bit of information, and I want to share what I can definitively know, and I don't want to share hearsay and rumors. That never does anybody any good. I try to keep that out as much as possible, or at least let you know this is a rumor. Anyway, basically, they're kind of restructuring. As markets are changing, they are shifting their focus and production away from their towable fifth wheel division and expanding on things like Class C and Class B. So, yes, the Vanleigh towable stuff is closing down, but basically it's for the purpose of development and production of more things. So it's kind of just a shift. Now, where this is tricky is they were based, that facility is based in Burnside, Missouri, something like. Apologies, I know that I should know that, but one of those is wrong. Anyway, that's not necessarily good news for those local people. However, Tiffin has really demonstrated a serious show of class through all of this in several different ways. First of all, I think it was last year, Vanleigh's, all their customer service stuff, meaning like all their warranty stuff, was absorbed and integrated into the Tiffin RV customer service line, effectively. So what that means is an existing Vanleigh customer will still maintain their warranty. They'll still maintain the ability to get customer service because those people, those mechanisms, those hotlines are still there. And I think, see, that's the thing. That's not normal in this industry. Usually when a manufacturer like closes like that, your warranty's toast because the manufacturer provides a warranty. This is kind of a funky thing that messes with people's heads. When you buy an RV from a dealership, the RV, even brand new, is actually essentially sold in as-is condition. It's not the dealership that provides a warranty, it's the manufacturer who's actually giving you that coverage. It doesn't really equate to much in the long term of things, but it's an important, maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody might find that interesting. I got off topic. Squirrel, regardless. Something else I thought was really cool is wherever they possibly could, Tiffin is working with the potentially displaced staff members from that facility to try to help them find future employment when that the shuttering eventually happens. And again, it's definitely something they didn't have to do, and I think that is just, It's just a really classy sign, and I think it's why so many people are kind of bummed by this. It's sort of like when Lazy Days, the Class C family-owned manufacturer, when they closed shop last year. It's like, man, you really want to see that little guy succeed against all odds. But in this instance, I guess, hopefully what we can see is that they reshape and re-evolve, and we see that culture kind of come back more into their motorized side of things. And you know, as I was putting this all together, it kind of occurred to me, I don't know that I've ever really just painted a picture of here's what the RV industry looks like in terms of its economic size and impact. The RV industry as a whole represents an $862 billion, with a B, dollar industry that employs 4.5 million people. And the RV industry represents just under 2% of our national GDP. RVing has really kind of leapt up from becoming one of those quaint little hobbies to becoming a more mainstream thing, with younger and younger people continuing to actually fuel the RV industry and continue to spur its growth. I've talked about this before, but like millennials right now are actually the single largest consumer group in the RV industry, and it's looking like Gen Z is going to start sliding up and overtaking them over time. I mean, eventually everything's going to change hands, but it's actually really surprising how quickly it looks like that market segment might grow right there. Now, what's really interesting about this is as the RV industry grows, it gives industry officials basically and lobbying groups the ability to essentially have a louder voice and more easily affect positive change for the RV industry and lifestyle. And today we're going to talk about a lot of symptoms of that. For instance, the state of Massachusetts is now the 18th state to actually create like a outdoor recreational official department, an official branch in their state government, or entity, maybe not branch, but entity in their state government, designed specifically to help promote the growth of especially camping related activities. RVing related stuff grew in Massachusetts like 24% last year, and a lot of states are recognizing that this is a growing, not a shrinking segment. As more and more focus gets placed on that, that allows them to start more effectively diverting funds for things like campground development or maintenance of like existing places, because there's nothing like an awesome public park that just falls into a state of disrepair, or a couple people disrespect the space and tear it up. More and more often we're going to see those places be able to be preserved, maintained, enhanced, and improved as the industry grows. And another symptom of that is how RVIA, the RV Industry Association, basically the biggest governing body over the RV industry, if you weren't aware, they are now lobbying basically to get additional money dedicated to expanding eRV infrastructure. So there's a lot of EV infrastructure, charging stations out there, but typically these are all set up for passenger vehicles. The trick is when you got like a trailer or something behind you, you probably occupy at least 2 of those, if not more. So they're working on trying to get development built for more things like pull-through sites. And interestingly, recently, there were some government boards that basically said, we kind of see your point, we see where this is headed, and that they would, quote, consider that in their development. Now, recently, $5 billion was allocated in the U.S. to the development of additional charging stations with, quote, hope of seeing some real effect of that mid-2023. The trick is, I can't find anything where anyone can says what that really might mean, what it would look like, but at least there's a conversation being had from the ground level, so hopefully that is something that comes to pass that helps benefit potential future eRVers. Not really a thing right now, still questionable if it might become one, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go here today. Now, in a indirectly but somewhat related topic here, Cummins has recently kind of changed their stance regarding the essentially progressive rollout internal combustion engine ban that is essentially slated, signed into law in many states, most notably California. For whatever reason, California, like McDonald's, always seems like when somebody wants to criticize a fast food chain, they criticize McDonald's. When somebody wants to criticize a state, they seem to criticize California. I have no opinion on that topic one way or the other. I'm just noticing a trend there. Regardless, anyway, when this internal combustion engine ban, which, by the way, if you weren't aware, there's legislation in place in several states, and more than just California, where by the year 2035, basically, a lot of small engines are going to essentially be banned. Now, what got caught in that were RV generators. And Cummins basically fired back right away, said, fine, then we won't sell our stuff in California at the end of 2023 because their existing products wouldn't meet the progressive rollout. And since then, they most recently kind of came out and said, you know, we looked at this and we are going to make sure that we're investing, we're developing new technology, new products that will be available so that moving into 2024, we will have products that will be available for sale in the States that otherwise we would have fallen under a ban, for sales. It's an interesting, almost 180-degree shift from what they were doing. But at the same time, they also said that anything they do will meet or exceed any government regulations that are thrown out there. I saw that as potentially huge good news for a lot of people in those areas, because the areas a lot of times I've noticed a lot of these engine bans are taking place are areas that things like boondocking are extremely common and popular. Well, you take away a common power source like a generator that a lot of people depend on, for use in those areas, and suddenly you have, no RV industry to speak of, not in its current state and form anyway. So by hearing like one of the largest generator companies say, we're going to double down. You know what? We decided we're not going to be angry about this. We're going to drive forward. We're going to prove. I think that's really good news. And hopefully, I think more companies follow suit. So if nothing else, people either in the market now or potentially we're looking to get into the market can have a little peace of mind at knowing one way or the other, they will have an opportunity. They will have a resource to go camping, to go RVing the way that they had intended. At least, that's just my nerdy little hope for things. When I first heard the story about that, progressive combustion engine ban, I was really like, man, that's going to have implications. That's going to reshape things. And maybe it is, but maybe it won't, be necessarily like, well, I guess we can't go camping now. I don't know. I guess I'd be kind of curious to know where do you think that's all going to go? I'm really kind of curious to know. Seems like there's a lot of posturing, but it does seem like more parties and entities involved here are starting to recognize that we're going to have to make some kind of changes regardless. Positive change. There's signed into law last December, the omnibus bill. Part of it includes a awesome shot in the arm for like the National Park Services. For the last couple of years, it's really seemed like a lot of the parks were starting to really looking a little long in the tooth, in some areas. And with more and more people, camping, and with fewer and fewer campsites readily available, more people using things like national parks, there's been a big pressure on the parks, and they've been seeing a lot more use than they necessarily had in the past. Well, basically, there's a big bill with a lot of spending. It's going to create some jobs that will help. Basically, the goal is to help rehabilitate some of these awesome existing national parks that had, kind of been falling into a little bit of a state of disrepair. There's, some inclusions for things like improving forest roads, national park roads that RVers depend on to be able to see those things, some of which had become questionably navigable, things like that. There's also proactively $1.5 billion set aside for disaster relief, which the first thing I thought of when I saw that was like all the stuff that happened in Yellowstone this last year with all the big flooding and whatnot. And having those funds available to jump on and repair, fix things as needed, that's a really good sign. But once again, it's another indicator here that we continue as kind of a nation to further recognize the impact of the not just RVing, but the overall outdoor lifestyle, and how things are starting to move in the way to help facilitate that more and more. And that's good news, because as far as I can see, we are expecting an increase in the number of people RVing in future years, not a decrease. I think a lot of people kind of looked at the COVID period and thought, well, a bunch of people are going to jump on the bandwagon, then a bunch of people are going to bail off. It's just going to be a little blip on the map. And certainly some of that definitely occurs, you know. But overall, the number of people who are RVing and the number of people who have expressed intent to go RVing and purchase an RV is actually on the rise, up about 14% from last year. That's a big jump considering there's already a lot of campground congestion issues out there, but that's another reason I'm really excited to see the RV industry grow. As the industry grows and their voice grows louder, the industry is more able to help influence things like, you know, streamlining permit processes and allowing the development of campgrounds more easily, because that's one of the problems right now. It takes a long time. It's really hard to just like build and open a new campground. It takes a lot of money that not everyone just necessarily has laying around, you know. But another crazy fact. Now, people who watch my videos all the time, they know that for whatever reason, I just pull the number 37 out of the air all the time for no other reason, by the way. There's no magic behind the number 37. That's why all my nerdisms are number 37. But 37% of leisure travelers in a recent survey indicated that at least one of their trips this year would be in an RV. So not people traveling for work, people exclusively traveling just for the fun of it. 37% of them said at some point they would take an RV trip this year. And some of the biggest groups there again are the millennial groups and the budding and exploding apparently in the industry Gen Z group. Now, what's also interesting is those two groups also expressed far higher intent to make a purchase after an RVing trip. Like last year, the millennials and Gen Z people who took an RVing trip last year overwhelmingly expressed intent to purchase an RV this year. So once again, it doesn't seem like, you know, you got to keep throwing logs in the fire, for lack of a better explanation. You get what I mean. You know, my point is, it seems like Grandpa's got a big old stack of wood out behind his wood shed. You know, it seems like there are a lot of people who are not only RVing now, but even more people who plan to go RVing in the future. So that only helps continue to fuel the industry's ability to have that louder voice to affect that positive camping change for all of us. But along with that, if there's going to be more RVs, more RVers, you need more people to take care of them. And I want to give a tip of the hat, a nod of the head over to the RV Technical Institute, RVTI. They, I don't know if they go by RVTI, I'm just going to say that anyway. Sorry. The last year they had this big recruitment goal where they wanted to bring, not only train up a bunch of existing techs, thousands of existing techs went through all kinds of RVTI training, but their goal was to bring in 1,000 new techs from completely outside of the RV industry, people who had nothing to do with the business previously, and they exceeded that by over 10% this last year. And their goal this year, again, remains the same, you know, to grow the number of people who are qualified to basically wrench on these things. That is another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, so much, you know, and to be fair, I'm guilty of it, I think. Even a lot of my talks tend to be very sales focused. Like, I'm not in sales myself. You don't got to squint real hard, though. I'm very sales adjacent. I recognize that. So that's not something that's always on my personal radar. But it goes without I've never claimed that any RV was perfect. And just, you know, being totally real about the expectations here. If you purchase an RV, chances are, at least once, you're going to need to take it back to some RV service center to have work. You want good, qualified people doing that, who know what they're doing, from the parts desk to the technicians to the service writers to everybody. And there's not a lot of entities out there focused on building, developing, growing that side of the business. It's almost like a farm league for like a major league baseball team or something like that. We need those people who are qualified to take care of things, because otherwise you end up with a bunch of idiots like me. I can run a camera, but Lord, you put a hammer in my hands, it's gonna look like the Three Stooges in a hardware store. It is not gonna be pretty.
What are you doing? Put it down. Put it down!
Now, in my last couple updates, I threw some predictions out there what I thought the first quarter of the year was gonna look like, and so far, it kind of appears to be falling in line with a little bit of what I expected here. So RV show season is an absolute swing out there. And I don't know if you've been like checking out all the various articles, but Attendance at these events has been very strong. There have been many attendance records actually set. Like I know the first day of the big Tampa RV show and event set like an attendance record. There was like Indianapolis or Ohio, something like that was very similar. The events that I've been able to attend, they've not been necessarily record attendance, but near record attendance. And something I've noticed is the rates of sales. The number of people actually making purchases at these has been very, very strong. Generally to the point of pacing just below what we saw during the beginning of last year in that big, still COVID fueled market. Right now in a, I guess you'd call it like non-COVID fueled, polluted, whatever the case may be, returning to normal kind of market, we are seeing some exceptionally high sale rates. But I think there are certainly some people jumping on that brand new fancy shiny 2023. But what I've been seeing is a lot of people jumping on board those available deals on the remaining in-stock 2022 stuff. I kind of figured that would be the case. I figured dealers would have a lot of that stuff very heavily discounted with a lot of incentives going, whether it's to their sales teams, to the customers, whatever, to help find homes for all that stuff. And that seems to be the case across from a lot of manufacturers. And what it's kind of looking at here is about the beginning of February is when we'll start to see more manufacturers get their production back up to swing. There was a lot of brands who took not just a week or two off during the Christmas phase like they normally do, but actually took sometimes as much as like 2 months and change off. I think that there's a lot of, there was a guy that commented on one of my videos this morning, said, you know, I appreciate your little update videos there because I'm one of the guys that delivers RVs and I'm trying to figure out when the runs are going to kind of start becoming available. Well, lately here, there haven't been any runs available because very few manufacturers have been producing RVs at a normal rate. Many have been producing RVs at either a reduced rate and many more at zero rate effectively for a while, waiting for, pardon me, the cold, wet stuff out here just absolutely gets my lungs. But hey, you live in Michigan, it's going to happen. What I'm getting at here basically is the stuff that's in stock, like even here at my own home lot, driving into the lot this morning after being gone for like the last 2 weeks, helping out at various Bish's events, I'm seeing some holes in the lineup. Now, I don't even know if I call it necessarily like Swiss cheese. Like we still have quite a bit in stock here, but there's actually starting to open up and be some room to park a few more things. And that will mean orders start flowing. That means the labor force gets going again. That means that the RV delivery force gets going again. And again, my prediction rolling through this year is first quarter here is going to be show season hot and heavy, getting rid of the old stuff and showing off a couple of those super shiny new things. Like I got you some of that. I got the first access look at that Brinkley Model G there again. You folks said you wanted it. I made it happen for you. You know, I'll keep doing whatever I can to by your request to make things happen. But I think by about the second and third quarters of this year, we will see a far more even-paced, normalized sales, production, everything kind of falling into a more traditional lineup, returning to roughly 2017, 18, 19-ish levels by the end of this year. So we're seeing a little bit of a lull in production right now. We're seeing a spike in sales, and I think you're going to watch them both kind of eventually equalize and normalize and harmonize a little bit, which frankly, we need. But that's just all a prediction. I'm kind of curious to know what you think might happen down the line there. Now, something not necessarily that I've been able to fulfill by your request, but your request being heard by the industry, we are actually starting to see the very first integration of Starlink hardware into newer RVs, albeit some very specific segments and price points. Thor recently announced that some of their high-end, high-dollar premium stuff would actually come with Starlink hardware or some level of prep. It's not exactly clear right now on their RVs, but specifically things like Airstreams, some really high-end motorized, some of your Jayco, Integra, Tiffin kind of stuff. The really big, higher dollar, probably diesel pushery sort of things, and Airstreams, which are a different creature in and of and all to themselves, you know. But it is interesting as more people go RVing, as more people are adopting an RV as an alternative to a home, as more people are adopting a mobile working lifestyle, where we have more and more demand for reliable remote internet services. And I'm kind of curious, you know, do you think that's something that's going to kind of be a fad? Do you think we're going to really see a hard return to the more traditional office environment? Or do you think the mobile working lifestyle is going to become a more and more viable thing for more people down the line? Now, I've never claimed to get everything right. I've never claimed to be an authority, but I have always done my very best to not try to just incite panic or fear or leverage that just for some quick views on something. And I see that stuff happen all the time. And I wanted to kind of address something that was blown a little bit out of proportion that I saw in some articles recently. Basically, there were these groups that put out this stuff basically saying, cancel all your traveling plans. We're going to have $7 gas by this summer. And they cited, there was this little, like the gasbuddy.com type analyst type people said that we could see $7 gas this summer. But that wasn't the whole story. That wasn't nearly the whole story. And I've had a couple people asking me about this, and I was just kind of shocked as like how badly the misinformation was being spread. So what more of the detail here is there were some analysis done, and the Gas Buddy people said, yeah, we might see $7 gas this summer in some very specific areas. They cited places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, places with huge concentrations of, population, driving, higher cost of living per capita, all those factors pushed together. In those regions, you might see a spike up to that $7 a gallon segment. Here's the thing though, nationally, it's not looking like that's going to be the case. All the current indicators basically say this: if you were able to pull the RV last year, you're going to be able to pull the RV this year. In fact, it might cost you a little bit less. On average, what's expected for this year's total average miles per gallon over time versus last year's is to actually see a drop in the miles per gallon, for gasoline. That's good. I think it was like 12 or 14% or something like that. Hopefully I remember to put something on screen over here with a little bit more concrete information for you versus what's rolling around loose in my nugget up here. So like I said, if you were able to tow something last year, if you could afford it, you should be able to afford it this year. I don't know that it'll necessarily be that kind of make or break difference where if you felt that the gas pumps were a little restrictive last year, I don't think you'll see the kind of relief that'll make you go, okay, that's the hump that I needed to get over to feel comfortable. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Just a prediction. Diesel drivers, it's a little bit trickier. We are coming into this year. We saw very little in the way of relief for diesel prices last year. We're coming into this year with I don't know if it's a record high, but a really high average diesel per gallon price. That is not expected to see any kind of immediate relief. It is thought, though, that after about halfway through the year, that may start to ease up. And it's currently, in January, predicted 11, 12 months from now that by the end of the year, your average cost per gallon of diesel fuel will drop about 17%. And I tell you what, I sure hope that comes to pass. Something I don't know that everybody realizes is how directly the price per gallon of diesel affects everything in American society. Whether it is a raw material, a mid-level product, or a final product headed for a shelf somewhere, every single thing in this country at some point or another ships basically on a semi-truck, with very, very precious few exceptions. So that price per gallon of diesel fuel directly affects the cost of everything on the shelf. Whether it's pieces, parts in the RV industry, or just the groceries that you're getting for your house. I really hope we see that little indicator come to pass and we start to see some relief on that by the end of the year, because that will benefit every man, woman, child, dog, cat, and iguana in every American household. Now, speaking of fuel, or at least power sources for vehicles, the oil giant Shell has recently announced that they are in the process of purchasing Volta, who is one of the big charging station networks for electric vehicles, both in Europe and the United States. And this is a very interesting shift. It's not the first major purchase that Shell has made toward the realm of electric vehicles, but it is basically the first time that like an oil company, as it were, now has a big time vested interest in the electric charging infrastructure in our country. That's an interesting shift to me. Kind of like the way, I don't want to say Cummins backed down after posturing with the internal combustion engine ban, but kind of that. It's an interesting shift in seeing more companies invest. Now, also interestingly, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, they also both have some money tied up in electric infrastructure here for vehicles. Now, again, this is more specific to vehicles and less specific to RVs, but the fact is 99% of the one affects the other in some way, shape, or form. As like I said last month in my industry update, like right now, there are some major hurdles in the way of electric vehicles. We have not enough charging stations. We have not enough power. We have not enough range to be able to tow with an electric vehicle. You know, there's some major hurdles that need to happen. But just because my little brain can't imagine it doesn't mean it's not necessarily possible. And when you start getting these big multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar maybe companies getting involved in this, suddenly you start having the funding and the resources to start seeing some of those dreams become a reality here. And once again, I'm kind of just opening up the comments section here to you. Where do you think this is all going to go? Do you think we will transition to basically a more fossil fuel free, vehicle by default in the future, whether it's tow vehicles, RVs, motorhomes, whatever? Do you think that we'll see like a split in the marketplace? You'll see, kind of like, fossil fuel, you see, electric or like hydrogen or something like that? Or do you think it's all kind of a pipe dream that just isn't really going to come to pass, isn't like physically feasible? Again, it's hard for me to imagine, but it's hard for me to imagine a lot of things. It's hard for me to imagine the fact that I can talk to a kid in Hong Kong on my phone right now through outer freaking space. But the fact is, we do it every day, and that has become a normal, accepted part of our society. I'm kind of wondering what isn't possible at this point, but I'd be kind of curious to know what you folks think. And when my voice starts jumping octaves like that, it's time for me to start wrapping things up. I've talked quite a bit. Thank you for hanging out with me, by the way. But I said I'd talk about value trends in the towable and motorized market. We'll hit on that, and then we'll wrap up for the day. So some really weird happenings, effectively, here, where this past month, to give you a reference point, when I say these wholesale values, these are dealers buying used RVs like from a wholesale auction is what these values are based on. So, a little bit of a caveat there. But overall, I think it really speaks to the trends of the industry. Last month, the average price of the average towable RV dropped about 7-8%, I think it was. And that means that versus last year in January at the same time, we're about 9% less per unit, that a dealer's paying. So that's interesting to me. And I think what that really represents here is that after the kind of borderline price spikeage, that happened in the industry the last 2 years, what used to cost $20,000 now is like $33,000 or something like that for about the exact same trailer. Like, again, I hope you appreciate the fact that I just acknowledge things like that head on. I don't like what I just said, but it's true. You can see the numbers for yourself. What am I going to do? What are you going to see? What you believe or what I tell you? Like, let's just be real about this. What I'm getting at here, though, is I think what's happening is dealerships are actively seeking a lower budget option to have available to buyers who have been priced out of some of the new RV market the last couple of years. Now, what's really goofy is what happened in the motorized market. Motorized values actually jumped like 10% from what they were last year at the same time. However, there's some interpretation of the numbers there. If you look, the average age of the motorhome being purchased at those wholesale auction blocks effectively was a couple years newer than it was the month before. And if you, like, I'm showing you some 5-year rolling charts. And by the way, pause the video if you want more time to review those. I've had people say, you don't leave them on the screen long enough. Just tap your screen, hit the pause button. And if your screen goes dark when you do that, like if you're on a phone, tap it again. Don't tap the play button, just tap the screen, and the darkness goes away and you can see the screen. Anyway, little pro tip there for you. The average motorhome value across the auction block right now is still about 15% less than last year. So we saw a goofy little blip in the map this month, but overall those value trends are trending downward, which I think you'll probably see that continue a little bit for the remainder of the year. However, what I don't necessarily predict happening is I don't foresee things getting back to pre-COVID values. I think enough of us have been around long enough. You see that the price of stuff can shoot up like a rocket, but it comes down like a parachute, and it never seems like it comes down all the way to where it was before. Even though a lot of raw materials like lumber, steel, copper, aluminum are at effectively pre-COVID values, we're not seeing that relief on the invoice side of things, at least not yet, not at this time. It'll be kind of interesting to see where that goes, and I'll continue to monitor that long term to try to put you in the best, most educated position possible so that you can be the best, most educated consumer you can possibly be. So once again, as always, if you appreciate how we continue to dig through all this information, it takes me a ton of time to bore through all this. I got a lot of different people who are some awesome resources for me that are willing to share this information with me on the inside of various parts of the business. If you like how we take the time out to dig through all this just to help educate you, you know, a lot of times there's not even really a direct benefit to Bish's RV to do this, and in a lot of cases, a lot of the information I share really kind of is not beneficial, the opposite of beneficial, detrimental to some of our business here. But we continue to stand by our commitment to being as candid and transparent and informative as possible so that we can make sure it's the right RV for you, it's the right time for you, and help you basically, you know, be in a position to get your second one the first time, like I say all the time. And if you like that, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new with us. Like our video, leave me a note. Thanks, nerd, anything like that. Please share any comments, anything that you have to add to any of this discussion here. Any topics you'd like me to dive into, whether it's on this video or any video, leave me a note. It doesn't have to be related. Sometimes people are like, sorry that this isn't related to that video. I don't care. Whatever you want to know, let me know any way you can, and I'll do my very best that I possibly can to fulfill that within the best of my ability. So until next time, hopefully it's a little warmer. Take care, stay safe, have fun. Happy camping, everyone. Through outer freaking space!